All right, let's just jump right in. For years, it feels like go-to-market teams, GTM teams, have been stuck on this giant hamster wheel, right? They're shipping more content, running more campaigns than ever before, but the results, they just aren't getting any better. And then boom, AI shows up. Everyone thought this was a solution, this was going to be the big fix, but instead, it basically held up a giant mirror to a really deep structural problem that honestly has been hiding in plain sight all along.
And this quote, man, it just nails the feeling perfectly. It did not feel broken. It felt busy. That constant motion, that feeling of being super productive? Well, it was actually masking a quiet collapse happening just beneath the surface. It's that classic trap, right? Being busy versus actually being effective. And that's the real tension we're going to pull apart today. So, okay, what exactly went wrong here? Well, we're calling it the quiet collapse for a reason. This wasn't some big, sudden explosion. No. It was more like a deep structural failure, something that just slowly buckled under its own weight.
And this really shows you the crazy disconnect. Look at the outside view. Everything looked fantastic. The dashboards were glowing green, budgets were growing, and content was just flying out the door. But the inside reality, the one the teams were actually living, totally different story. Trust was going down, conversions were getting thinner and thinner, and this is the real kicker, the system wasn't learning anything from what it was doing.
And here's the crucial point. The whole system got really, really good at optimizing for production because production was visible. You can count blog posts, you can count emails sent. But real understanding the customer, the market, the context, well, that's not so easy to see on a dashboard. It's invisible. And because it was invisible, it wasn't optimized for. So those critical feedback loops between what the market was saying and what the teams were doing, they just completely broke down.
Okay. So then along comes AI, the great revealer. And instead of swooping in to fix the problem, it was like pouring gasoline on a smoldering fire. It exposed every single crack that was already there in the system.
And this is a journey I think a lot of us have been on. First, there's this total euphoria, right? Output just explodes. Writers become editors, executives are seeing all this incredible leverage. But then, confusion starts to creep in. The content, it sounds plausible, but it's kind of shallow, and trust starts to quietly erode. So what's the first reaction? Misdiagnosis. We blame bad prompts, looking for some simple, easy fix. But the real revelation, the aha moment, is realizing the tool was never the problem. The problem was that we dropped this incredibly powerful engine into a system that had no memory and no source of truth.
This leads to something called productivity theater, and I love that term. It's when systems optimize for motion instead of signal. You end up with teams that are just performing productivity instead of actually achieving it. Think more meetings, longer documents, everyone feels incredibly busy, but real confidence, real results, those are actually going down. The whole machine is just optimizing for the look of work, not the signal of what's actually working.
So if tweaking our prompts isn't the answer, then what is? Well, this is where we have to make a pretty big shift in our thinking. We've got to move away from just focusing on prompts and start focusing on systems. We need to rethink the entire architecture, basically from the ground up.
And that leads us to this really important question. What if the bottleneck in GTM isn't writing? This is the core mistake almost everyone made. We all assumed the biggest problem was just the physical act of typing words. But it's not. The real bottlenecks, the ones that have always been there, are things like understanding, judgment, and keeping everything coherent across all the different places you talk to customers. And AI, on its own, can't fix any of that.
So you can really see the two different paths forward here. On one side, you've got prompt culture. That's all about momentary instructions, just tuning the language for a specific task. But on the other side, you have systems culture. And that's about building an enduring environment. It's about designing how information actually flows and creating a durable memory, a place to store what's true. It's really the difference between just having surface control and building real structural intelligence.
Which brings us to the central idea here, a whole new way of thinking that kind of reframes this entire problem. We need to stop looking at content as just this one-off creative project and start treating it like infrastructure.
Okay, content as infrastructure, what does that actually mean? Well, think about real infrastructure, like a bridge or the power grid. It's supposed to be kind of boring. It's durable, it needs constant maintenance, and if it fails, everything that depends on it breaks. When you start thinking about your content that way, you see it for what it is, a durable, distributed system that carries the meaning of your company. And just like a bridge, it degrades if you don't maintain it, and it absolutely requires clear ownership. This shift in thinking completely changes the questions your team starts asking. You go from asking, what should we publish next, to asking, what system produces this content and what does that system learn? You go from, how fast can we write this, to how does information actually move through our company and where does it decay or get lost? See? They're just fundamentally better questions.
So what does this infrastructure actually look like in practice? Well, you can think of it as a three-layer stack. At the bottom, you have your system of record. This is what owns truth and memory. Think of your CRM. This is where the state of the world lives. Then, in the middle, you have the orchestration layer. This is the nervous system. It controls the flow, the logic, the safeguards. And only at the very top do you have the inference layer. That's the AI. It's just a service that generates outputs. It is not the brain. And keeping those layers separate, that is absolutely key.
Now, when you actually build a system like this, something pretty profound starts to happen. Your go-to-market team stops just producing stuff and starts to actually learn. And that creates this incredible compounding advantage over time.
And look, the goal here isn't some magic system that spits out perfect content on day one. A real learning system is one that produces fewer surprises over time. That's the win. Your confidence grows, making decisions gets easier, and you finally stop making the same dumb mistakes over and over again.
So naturally, this means the way we measure success has to shift. We have to move away from this world that was completely obsessed with raw output and into a new one where the single most valuable asset you can build is trust. Trust in your content, trust in your data, trust in the whole system.
So what does this future actually look like? Well, it's not flashy. It's not about an AI writing some viral hit that goes crazy overnight. The real future of AI in go-to-market is, well, it's quieter, it's more boring, and it's way, way more reliable. It's about making it cheaper to be thoughtful and just compounding your company's knowledge day after day.
So in the end, it really all comes down to this one choice. You can treat AI as just another tool, bolted on to an already broken system, and just keep chasing output. Or you can see this moment as a huge opportunity to rebuild your entire go-to-market infrastructure and build something that actually learns. One of those paths feels a lot faster right now, but the other one, that's the one that's built to last.